My name is Samuel and I'm joined today by my colleague Chris, and we're solutions consultants in the Bedford Consulting team. And today's focus is on using Anaplan for sales and empowering your sales strategy. Got a few quick slides that I'll fly through, and then we'll jump into the products so that you can see predictive insights and of course how that feeds into Anaplan. So I think firstly, it's good for us to focus on exactly what predictive insights is. I'll refer to it as PI as we go, and where the real pain points are in terms of where it adds value and why customers will be interested in it and why it can help you in your organizations. So when we're looking at predictive sales planning, we're looking at that sales strategy. And we've broken the sales strategy down into three core chunks, if you like. Three core sections that look at the sales planning, the sales incentives, and the sales insights. The focus in that is, of course, on where should we sell in our planning, how should we sell in our incentives, and of course, what should we be selling in terms of those insights. And we can see that structure expanded further when we look at our familiar honeycomb model here, our honeycomb diagram. And we can see the way that each of those headings or each of those sections may be covered by a variety of models or applications that we might build within our Anaplan environment. Today's focus is going to be more so around territory and quota planning, but of course this could be applied to a number of areas within that sales space. Finding focus in an uncertain market. Now, this is something that all businesses will find as a challenge, but of course, in the present times of COVID-19, this is even more prevalent and something that we're all facing firsthand. And the four key areas here that we want to focus on are revenue predictability amidst market uncertainty, rebalancing the sales force for changing demand. Now, that rebalancing is really what we're looking at with that territory and quota planning, that allocation of sales resource. There are two elements here. One, we're looking at the capacity side of things in terms of utilizing our sales force as best as we can. But of course, we're also looking at forecasting that changing demand. And with PI, we're looking at how would we forecast such demand, or how would we prioritize the allocation of that capacity if maybe it's not based purely on the information that we have. Maybe the data that we have currently in terms of actuals is not vast enough or broad enough to give us the insight that we need to make next step decisions. And that's where PI adds a lot of value. Weighing sales investments against cash flow trade-offs, that cost benefit analysis, always of course key, especially when we're looking at that territory and quota planning as we are today. And reducing reaction time in order to build resilience. In uncertain markets, of course, resilience is one of the ability to be resilient is, of course, one of the key risks. And PI really enables us to have more information and more insight into the data that's available to make more informed choices from it. So we'll look here a bit at the before and after, if you like. So with Anaplan, you would already have your territory and quota planning model. You may already have a variety, a plethora of sales performance management models and applications that you would be utilizing. And in that, you would have prioritized accounts, and you may have given an account score of A or a ranking of A for a specific account in your pipeline. And you would have information such as the industry, such as the revenue, such as the number of employees and maybe the location, the kind of information that would be readily available to you. However, with PI, with predictive insights, you would now be able to go that step further. And you would now start to look at HR trends, for example, that third-party data, such as the other technologies, the relevant technologies that they may use, buyer intent, and also information about the company that goes beyond just how many employees they have or what industry they're in. And these are the predictive insights that come through that PI application that enable you to really go a step beyond where you were previously. So even in a situation where you previously ranked it as an A and you still rank it as an A through PI, you now have a much better basis for understanding why that account ranks as an A than you did before. In a situation which would be more relevant really, where previously you had ranked it as, for example, a C, and then PI is enabling you to rank it as an A, that's now giving you an opportunity to completely change your strategy from where it would have been previously. And that's what we're going to look at today, is exactly how PI brings that data together and how it compares core data sets to give you that comparison so that you can now see that new predictive ranking and that predictive score, so that maybe you can actually identify opportunities that you're missing out on by using PI, as well as, of course, confirming some of the decisions that you've already made that, of course, will be strong. So in the pursuit of strategic sales goals, some of the key questions that we're asking are the likelihood to buy a product and the likelihood to spend of our target customer. And that's where we're utilizing these predictive insights. Sorry, I'm getting an echo. If anyone is not on mute, if you wouldn't mind putting it on mute, that would be great. Thank you. That's better. So in our pursuit of strategic sales goals, the key questions are likelihood to buy the product and, of course, the likelihood to spend. So you will be using that third-party data through predictive insights to answer those key questions. So just a few other bits here before we jump into the product. So just a few other bits here that we'll cover off. So PI is gonna give you those 4 key areas that it's going to cover. We've got the predictive account segmentation and scoring. We've then got the territory planning, which we're going to cover through the territory and quota planning application in Anaplan. We've got the sales capacity planning that we were looking at earlier, and then of course the predictive quota planning, where we're looking at setting targets within those territories that we've now identified. And we have some elements that will still exist and will always exist. So we will still look at simulations, what if modeling and scenario plans, and we'll do so through the use of versions and the multidimensional modeling that we've always done. The basis of that is typically actuals with assumptions. That's typically the way that we would work. The difference is now, of course, we have PI, which is driven by advanced algorithms and machine learning based logic. So it's taking the firmographics that we already know, the information about firms that we have, such as, as we said, the industry, the location, and so on. But we're now able to bring in information that relates to growth of specific sectors, companies, hierarchies, and so on. HR trends or hiring trends, the technographics, where we're looking at, the similar technology, for example, that may be purchased. The organizational structures that may go slightly beyond that which is immediately available online, buyer intent and propensity to buy. These, of course, are huge. In any sales planning process, we, of course, want to know that information, and that PI will give us more information that helps us to structure our decision making around this. Win rates, and of course, total available market as well in TAM, all of which coming from that information that we'll be receiving through PI. So this really comes down to filtering the signal to identify opportunities. If we consider our information and our data, so we have our data that is vast, there is lots out there. We want to filter that down to the key bits of information that are going to help us to make the best decisions, in this case, in relation to territory and quota planning. And key points like the buyer continuing to research solutions. So the potential customer or the prospect that one is looking at, being able to look at the research solutions that they're bringing up, being able to understand what's important to them right now. That's the kind of information that PI is giving us, information that we otherwise simply wouldn't have had. Hiring positions in relevant departments. This is hugely important because it can now enable us to see where a prospect is looking to invest their own time and money and resources so that we can start to structure our own sales strategies around those investments that are already in place. Investment made in complementary tools. So if we're looking at our technology space, for example, Anaplan being the key PM tool, an investment in ERP, an investment in CRM tools, this would be relevant because these, of course, would complement Anaplan. And this kind of digital transformation or information around this kind of digital transformation could, of course, help us to structure who we would be looking to show Anaplan to based on their need in their journey. And also prospects researching solutions for new use cases, but also enabling us to research solutions for new use cases as well as we progress through. And this really starts to help us build out that account pipeline and grow it to its maturity so that we can be more targeted and optimal in the way that we select accounts that we want to invest more time and more effort. And we can do so not just based on the relatively limited data that we have already in our system or even in our level of awareness, but that can go wider using PI as it bases it, of course, on machine learning and artificial intelligence. So I'm now going to jump into Anaplan, and I'll show you the app that we're using, the Territory and Quota app, and how we're currently working in the app as a before, if you like. Then we'll jump into the really exciting bit that is, of course, PI, and I'll hand over to my colleague Chris for that before we jump back into Anaplan to see how we would use that information. So I'll just switch over my screen now to show you Anaplan. Okay. Brilliant. So here we have a territory and quota planning with predictive insights application in Anaplan. And in this model, in this specific page, we're looking at a direct sales representative review. And we have our different breakdown of products, and we have the different sales reps, and we're looking at our periods and so on and so forth. But here the key focus is the performance of that specific sales rep in relation to where we have allocated the territories that we have allocated to that rep. Now, if we sort of move away from the next steps for a moment in terms of how we got there and so on, and what we do with that information, in our key account details down here, we can see all of the accounts that relate to, in this case, Tom Fraser. And we can see the target margin, the potential sales that we see, the prior year sales, and most importantly here is our base score and our base rank. We're basing this base score and this base rank on our information. This is based on information that we have managed to gather, our internal research teams, maybe some external resources, and so on. And in that, we have a pretty good idea with our own market knowledge of a scoring system that we have in place. And that scoring system then is of course generating a rank. And on the back of this, we're going to say, okay, we want to allocate in this way. You should be, allocating this amount of resource to this account or vice versa. This could spread across accounts, across sectors, across industries, locations, and so on. Within this, we would typically be driving it from actuals. So for example, you've sold a lot to a similar type account. So naturally, let's focus on that area and see if we can push more. And this is based on what we know. And where we're going to see the value add through PI in just a moment is that PI enables us to start to look at the bits that we simply don't know, connections that we didn't make, and bringing in data to provide information for us that we didn't realize was available. And that's really where the value add in PI comes in. So after this, we'll pop back into the Anaplan piece, and I'll show you how we get to this predictive score and how we can use the override, and we'll speak a bit on how that can be used. But Chris, I'll hand over to you there for you to take us through PI.
Perfect, thank you, Sam. Let me just share my screen now as well. So just a bit of detail around the actual data that is feeding the predictive insights engine. So Sam already covered the kind of the four pillars, if you like, the four categories: overall company data, trends in HR, technology, signs of buyer intent, and how we group those. But in reality, there's actually over 4,500 specific buyer and intent attributes that can help you understand your market. There's firmographics, so they give you a sense of things like company size, industry, financial growth rates, and trends around the growth, but also insights on business and technology partnerships that they might have. HR trends to tell you not only about the growth and expansion of the existing departments, but if they're launching new departments, for example, that might actually use your solution. Technology data, so that goes through all sorts of applications that they might use, software that might help complement your solution or even compete with your solution. Understanding the tech stack that they have can also help explain the types of investments that a company actually makes in the areas like IT, security, engineering, operations, etc. And then where the really unique piece comes in is this idea of buyer intent. So this actually tells you what businesses are actively researching for online. So it's not just tracking the kind of general web traffic, it's looking for a surge in searches. So if everyone starts searching for a CRM tool, for example, that's the kind of data that will start to flag. And this can be broken out by product or solution of interest. It could be brand related. And really it's helping to understand when might be a good time to contact them as well. This thing is always running. It can change its scores as those searches come in. On average per account, so across the 23 million companies that's in the database, we can identify over 500 unique predictive attributes. So obviously far too much for any human to go through to understand what attributes to prioritize. So instead, that's where the power of the predictive insights piece gets its momentum. It continuously gathers, it refreshes the insights, it looks at buying signals regularly, and then through the machine learning can identify and predict the right attributes for the ideal buyers. So these insights act as data inputs for the predictive insights model, and then can give intelligent, actionable recommendations across those accounts. In terms of how it actually works in detail, if I bring the insights engine across here, and if I go to create a new market to get a new set of analysis, if I just do a single product here, all you need to be able to feed predictive insights with is two sets of data. You have what we call the positive set. So this is a subset of your total base of accounts or leads, for example, where the desired outcome has occurred. Obviously, the more records you have, the better. So for example, if you're optimizing accounts that actually closed and maybe bought your product, your software, then we would take the closed won records from the CRM system. And then we're comparing that versus what we call the house list. So that is your total universe of potential targets that might sit in your system, in your CRM system, for example. So obviously, ideally, that would be a lot bigger than the positive set, and that's the important list that we're going to get scores for. For example, if you're trying to optimize the marketing funnel, for example, then the relevant house list would be all of the leads that are in your marketing platform, for example. And the key point of this insights engine is it's not just restricted to perhaps who's going to buy your product. It could be anything from BDR queue optimization, where you're bringing in MQL records from the last year. It could be outbound account sourcing. It could be leads. It could be accounts. It could just be high value customers. So which prospects are likely to purchase a higher value, for example. You determine what the positive set is versus the entire database. This data you can upload through a CSV file, or it can link directly into source systems such as Salesforce, for example. I actually have one here that I prepared earlier. So it's loading in a sample positive set and a positives house list. And here we're looking at on account by account basis, who's actually going to buy our product. In terms of mandatory fields that you need to have, really it's just the company name is the only thing that's mandatory. But if you have information like email addresses for contacts, locations, those kind of attributes, they can be fed in as well. So really feeding in what you already know, and then predictive insights, as Sam said, is filling the gaps to tell you what you don't know. So here we can see on the screen here, looking at what our ideal profile is for a customer. So this is using that positive list across those 4,500 attributes to give you the attributes or the properties against that company that we should be looking for. So our ideal profile has a call center, for example. They've got financial analysts in-house. They might be hiring e-commerce positions. So you can see not only staff that are there currently, who they're hiring for as well, so growth in certain areas. And you'll see it's basically picked out the top 50 or so attributes that we should be looking for in a customer. You also have things like by size, so looking at our ideal customers by size based on employees and by revenue, and then also what industry they're in as well. So for this data set, for example, doing very well with insurance, less well with construction, business services, etc. So you get some high level insight of the ideal profile. What you also get is more detail around what particular attributes are having a lift on the score. So if you think back to the dashboard that Sam showed briefly, you had a score between 0 and 100. You can see the impact that each of these attributes is having. So if someone, for example, has data center management, they're more likely to buy our particular product than someone that doesn't. What you can also do in here is see the comparison of your positive set to the rest of your house list. So if I look again at something like revenue, for example, we can see here our database has a lot more accounts in this revenue range, 10 million to 50 million, than we historically have been selling against. So perhaps a too high a weighting in this case, versus the 200 million plus, we typically have a lot of success in this space, but our house list does not represent that. So actually we should try and perhaps get more leads in this area, because this is where we've been more successful historically. And that can be across size, across industry, etc. If I choose industry here, you can see again, business services in the house list versus our success in the past based on the positives. So all of this gives you a good high level overview of your database versus the success you've had in the past. And obviously the whole point of this model is as you sell to new customers, as you add more leads into your database, this can be run and it will refine the scores, it will refine the recommendations. What you can also do, talking about not knowing what you don't know and how Predictive Insights can help, Anaplan Predictive Insights can actually recommend new leads to go after. So not only are you limited historically to the data in your CRM system, for example, you can see here PI is actually recommending a whole set of net new accounts that aren't actually in your database, but that have a high score. For example, here we're looking at any companies that have a score above 60 or so. There's 39,000 that Anaplan is recommending to you to focus on. And you can drill into this by country, by industry, and obviously down to individual companies. When it comes to the individual companies, this is where classic Anaplan can come in to help you with that analysis. So if I bring Anaplan across here, slightly scary, but this is the full data set that will come out of Anaplan Predictive Insights. So by every single account, so individual companies we have going down here on the left-hand side, if you're doing on a lead by lead basis, this might be an individual contact, individual opportunity. In my case, this is a company. We have attributes such as the revenue, number of employees, and all of those attributes that it's ranked against. And you can see the tick boxes here for if it's true or not. So we can see here that if I choose something like Aviva, we can see that they are hiring test automation people. They are using Amazon as a software suite, for example. You have this information against every single company, as well as importantly, that predictive score. So this score is somewhere between 0 and 100. And in this case, we've sorted it. So all the top ones are 100. If I scroll all the way down here through these thousands of opportunities, we get down to the 50s and then below. So it's allowing you to do that territory and quota planning based on that predictive account score, combined with the base score that you had already. If I just flip in and show this in a slightly nicer view, you can also use Anaplan just to present this in a slightly more consumable fashion, should we say. So perhaps as an individual account rep, I can have just the accounts that are relevant to me. If I choose one of these, I'm going to pick Brewdog. I can see the attributes that are relevant to Brewdog, the number of employees, the revenue, and all these attributes that the Predictive Insights engine has generated for us. I can also then start to do analysis at a slightly higher level. So if I look at my analysis here, I can see by rank. So the rank of A to D is just determined by that score. For example, I've said everything above an 85 is an A, everything above about a 70 is a B. And we can start to identify common attributes across these ranks. So if I look here on the charts, for rank A, 59% of our rank A's are using Azure Cloud, 51% have a data warehouse, 81% have a BI tool. As I move down here through the ranks, you'll see how these proportions change. If I get down to rank D, then for example, only 19% are using a data warehouse, and these are the ones with the lower scores, and therefore perhaps not customers or prospects, should I say, that we should be spending too much time on based on their propensity to buy, based on all of the insights that the engine is giving us. Same way here, we got current positions, we got hiring positions, people that are hiring social media roles, for example, perhaps is a good target customer for us. So this is all at a slightly higher level, again, with obviously the score at an account by account level. Now, I'm going to hand back to Sam, who's just going to show us how, as a sales manager or perhaps as a individual account rep, I can start to use this score when it actually comes to doing my sales planning.
Thanks, Chris. Just sharing my side now, bear with me. Okay. Okay, good. So we've now seen the way that we would have worked previously with that which we know and the information that we have to hand. We've then seen how we can now utilize predictive insights to add to that which we didn't know. For all of the information that is available but we didn't realize it was available, all of the dots that we could connect but didn't realize that they were even there to connect or how to connect them, that information has now come in through predictive insights. And we've also seen the way that we can use that data in a variety of ways. And right here, we'd be looking at it from a sales rep point of view. And in this sales rep dashboard, I effectively want to be looking at or comparing the predictive score and rank from PI in relation to the base score and the base rank that we've populated based on whatever logic it is that we currently follow. And as we were saying previously, it may well be that in some cases it's pretty similar, right? So it may well be, if we took Rite Aid, for example, in relation to Tom Fraser, it might be that actually we're pretty similar here and we're pretty happy with what it is. But in other situations, it may be completely different. And it may be that actually something that we thought was really good because maybe we've sold there previously, or maybe there's a history of demand in that area. Maybe that's actually something that's reducing and there's a shift in where the focus is. And we haven't been able to identify that because we're of course looking at a smaller spread of data. So in that situation, we want to have control over how we use it. And this is an example of how we may do that. So we have the base and now we have our prediction that's come through, our predictive rank and score. And we may want to set overrides. So in some situations, we may keep it as is. And in situations where we do, we've set it in this case to use the predictive score and the predictive rank as the main one. So considering this will then flow through to the rest of the model and we'll be able to use it through our territory and quota planning, we would now be able to say, okay, if we don't add in any override, we can leave it at 92. But of course, if we do want to, then we can make that change. And if we take something like down here, for example, where we've got quite a big swing, we could then say, okay, well, we do actually want to override the score and we'll actually have it at 70. We don't want to completely maybe believe the PI in this case. And on the rank, we may say, okay, fine, we'll agree on the rank and actually take it at a B. So we could input that as an override and that's what would then flow through. The key thing here, of course, is not that we're going to pull everything out of the source and necessarily just run with it, but it's the way that you can use it to inform decision. We now have the basis that we previously had and that we always will have in terms of immediately available information, but we now have a predictive score and a predictive rank that could be giving us new opportunities. When we consider this operationally from a top-down and bottom-up perspective, from that top-down perspective, we could be looking at this in terms of quotas. We could now be saying that based on where we see demand to be coming, we could now start to set the quotas and allocate that to the relevant sales team based on that information that's coming from predictive insights. And we may base that on information that we previously didn't have available to us. From a bottom-up perspective, of course, we could be looking at pipeline. And as we're ranking that pipeline in situations where we thought actually this is an A, if the predictive insights are saying that it's a B, we may now want to adjust the likelihood of that becoming a reality. And in doing so, we can then revalue that pipeline and have a more accurate or maybe a more realistic forecast of where our wins and losses are going to come from. And this, of course, can be applied to a number of areas within the sales line of business. Here we're looking at territory and quota, but as we saw from Chris just now, there's a lot of information in there and a lot that you can mold and customize to the direction and decision making that the customer wants to make and that you want to make as an organization. So there's a plethora of information in there and some real great opportunities for value add. I'm sure you'd agree. So that's pretty much bringing the demo to an end here in terms of predictive insights and what it is and what it does and how it works. I'm just going to flick back now into the slides just to share with you the contact details. So of course you can get in touch with us. Bear with me. Okay. Good. Okay, hopefully you can see my slide here. Chris, just give me a shout if it's not showing.
It was there. Just let's go back again.
Okay,
we can see it. It's in PowerPoint, but that's fine as is.
Okay, perfect. So if you want to get in touch around Predictive Insights and all of the fantastic features that it has, or of course around the apps or the models that you may want to build around around Predictive Insights, or the way that it integrates, or the way that you could use it, then of course do reach out there. The email address is there, and we're available on phone as well. So thanks a lot for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you to demo it further.